Hello and welcome back to the Eternal Witnesses podcast. I'm one of your Eternal Witnesses, Mark Mara, and I'm here with your other Eternal Witness, the Birdman himself, Michael Mapson. Say hi, Mapson.
Hello.
And before we jump in, I do want to say we've gotten some great feedback on our first few episodes here. This is episode 3. As a growing podcast, it would be fantastic if you would subscribe, like, leave a comment, rate us, whatever your podcast app has as an option. Do it. Give us feedback. It would be fantastic. It means a lot. As a growing podcast, it goes a long way. So if you like what you hear or what you see if you're watching on YouTube, please consider doing that for us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the best way you can help us. And tell your friends, too. They don't even have to listen to Magic. They can just hit play and walk away and come back an hour later.
Yeah, that's true. We definitely encourage gaming the system 100%. So with that being said, we have some really fun stuff on tap. It seems like we've been doing a lot of winning, you and I, since we've started this podcast. So that continues here. We have a Legacy 1K that, spoiler alert, we both top 8'd. So we'll talk about what we played there. We both trophied on Magic Online. I did in Modern, you did in Legacy. So we'll talk about what we played, how it went, look at those decks. Also, we have a new set coming out, Edge of Eternities. So there are some, actually pre-release was just this weekend, so there's some early results that are in. We've compiled some cards that we think we're actually excited about, and then some cards that maybe a bit less excited about that might still see some play here and there. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll wrap up with what we have coming up, where you might be able to play Magic with us over the next couple of weeks here. So how's that sound, Mapson? You ready to jump in?
Sounds like a plan.
All right, Legacy 1K up first. We played it on the draw in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. It was 24 players, 26 players. Do you remember the exact count? It was in the 20s.
I don't know. I didn't pay that much attention.
Yeah, it was a good turnout, though. And so what did you play?
So I played, surprise to no one, Nadu.
The Birdman himself registered the bird. Color me surprised. I'm really not. I played Mystic Forge. Yeah, also probably not a surprise to anybody. So we both played what we feel are some pretty good decks here. So why don't we start with you? Talk about there's a few different versions of Nadu that are out there. Why don't you talk a little bit about the version you played and why you chose that? And if you were playing it again this weekend, would you register the same version?
Yeah, so I played sort of close to the list people would associate with me, right? Like there's the mid-range version, which is the version I like. There's the breakfast version, which I don't care for. The mana drives me crazy. The playing Narcomoeba, my deck drives me crazy. And then there's like the Guy's Cradle version. That deck is also good. It's just not the one that I played. So, excuse me. I played a list that was inspired by a friend of ours, Brady. Brady is a big Nadu enjoyer and has been really, I would say, the person pushing the archetype forward over the past few weeks or months. Well, if you really want to call it forward, it feels like the deck hasn't actually changed much in the past year. But he is the one who is making a lot of those changes when they do happen. The deck was good. I played a couple cards off from what he plays. We always disagree on certain things. Like he's a big fan of, well, I don't know if big is the right word, but he prefers Noble Hierarch. I prefer Birds of Paradise. The Exalted has literally never mattered to me. I've never won or lost a match by one with this deck, but I have multiple times tried to play Noble Hierarch and then lost because I didn't have a flying blocker. And I have multiple times killed people by being like, I'm going to put all these Scythecat Cub triggers on this Birds of Paradise and fly over you. I think it's very relevant. I think Noble Hierarch is not relevant at all. And if you really need something to push you over, Birds of Paradise can make a 4th color for Paradise Ending or Prismatic Ending.
Well, as somebody that frequently has access to Ensnaring Bridge, please keep those 0 power Exalted guys away. I'm with you, Birds of Paradise.
I mean, just in all seriousness, I don't think the Exalted really matters.
That's I think, probably the only time, though. I mean, yeah, that's one of the few times it probably makes a difference with this deck.
Yeah, but even being able to block a Tameo can be relevant, sure. Right? Like getting to kill it if it attacks. Getting to block a Murktide Regent is something that comes up I think, quite a bit. Um,
And
Blocking
not
Archon has
not for
come up.
nothing. Like I have put a bunch of counters on a Birds of Paradise when I've played Nadu, and the flying matters sometimes as well. So that's also nice.
Yeah. The deck was definitely good. I would run it back. Spoiler alert, I will probably be running it back at Buffalo Chicken Dip this weekend. Yeah, I mean, it's just a good, powerful deck. Um, how do you feel about Forge?
Yeah, Forge was fun. Let me pull up the list here for folks that are following along on YouTube. Oh, that's not it. That was a filthy Reanimator player. There we go. Here's this pristine Forge deck for our viewers. Yeah, so I played what I consider to be a pretty standard version of Mystic Forge. 4 Flesh Rakers, 4 Karns, 4 Commands, 4 Rings, 3 Forges as the primary kind of threat package. 20 lands using the Planar Nexus mana base that's now pretty standard. And I think what most would consider to be a pretty typical Wishboard or a sideboard with Wishboard that has access to 4 Leyline of the Void, a couple of Dismembers. I played a Surgical as a 5th Graveyard hate spell. Some folks will just use the 4 slots for the Leyline of the Void. I know the folks that play at this store, I expected a lot of graveyard shenanigans, primarily blue-black, which was, I think, pretty well represented there. But also people play some off-meta stuff and you know, there always tends to be some graveyard shenanigans at this specific store. So I decided to play a Surgical as well, which is not unusual. You do see that from time to time, but yeah, I was pretty happy. Obviously, we both had top finishes, which we can talk a little bit more about in a second, but you never really feel like you're out with this deck. You know, if you're on the draw against combo, you might feel like you've got some work to do, but the reality is that you can win pretty fast with this deck as well, or you can play a long grindy game if you need to, which is sometimes where you get against blue-black or the Delver style decks. So yeah, I felt pretty good. I only had a single loss in Swiss. I can't remember who that was to for the life of me. I just, you know, I must not have written that down. Maybe you'll remember. But no, deck felt great. I haven't played it in paper in a little bit, so it was nice to kind of dust it off, so to speak. And I did, I think, 10 points of damage to myself in one turn with Candelabra and Keys and Ancient Tombs. So I had a lot of fun. Anytime you can use Candelabra to deal 10 to yourself in a turn, you know you're having a good time.
Yeah. I kind of have a lot of thoughts and questions about this deck. Spoiler alert, I trophied with the deck this week, and I'm pretty high on it. But I don't know if you want to necessarily talk about it more now or after we kind of cover this this event.
Yeah, I guess why don't we talk a little bit more about the event, because like you said, you did trophy with this with a slightly different configuration, so maybe we can hold the kind of deeper conversation about card choices and stuff until that section. But yeah, let's talk a bit more about the event. So like how'd your Swiss go with Nadu? Do you remember any of your matchups that you'd played? Let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things with these events, it's like, yeah, it's cool. I top aided this event, but like they're just so short that like it's like it's still an accomplishment, but sometimes it just doesn't feel like enough. But there were definitely some fun moments for me in this event. First, not somebody that either of us played against, but our friend Leland played the most bizarre deck
Yeah, crazy.
I think I've ever seen anybody register at a comp REL event. Um, we can actually pull it up on the screen. He got 15th place with it, and he played this like Cloud Post monstrosity hybrid with like Dryad of the Elysian Grove and Falicut. And what's the name of that 2 and a green card?
Clear the Land. Yeah. Also, I didn't realize this, but he had Karuga as a companion. Absolute hero. But yeah, so he was, playing. I saw Clear the Land. So this card's fun. 2 and a green sorcery from Mercadian Masks. Each player reveals the top 5 cards of their library. Put all land cards revealed this way onto the battlefield tapped, and then exile the rest. Did I hear him say that he killed a Doomsday player with this? I thought I heard some chatter that he killed a Doomsday player with this by resolving it after the pile.
No, he wanted to. I believe it got forced.
Oh, I see.
But that would have been pretty sick.
Yeah. I'm
I
less excited for this card than I was a second ago, but still fun.
well, I mean, if it had resolved, it would have been sick, right?
Yeah.
I gotta be honest. I was expecting him to win approximately 0 matches, and
Yeah.
I don't remember how he finished, but he did win. He won matches.
Yeah.
I think he might have gone like 2 and 3, which is not good. Like considering what he chose to bring with him, you know, I was pretty surprised, pressed. But yeah, this deck was a mess. So that was a fun moment.
Beautiful. You said mess. I think you meant thing of beauty. This thing is fantastic, but maybe would not recommend if you care about your entry fee. But if you're there to have fun, you could do a lot worse than this deck.
Yeah, he was planning to bring it to Buffalo Chicken Dip, but then he realized that might be a mistake. So round one, I played against a deck, and game one, so my opponent reveals Yorion. What deck do you put them on?
I mean, either D&T or probably less likely like a beans-based control deck, but I'm going to assume they're probably on D&T if they're showing Yorion.
Yeah, absolutely. So then my opponent goes turn one Verdant Catacombs. I was like,
Okay.
not D&T. That's weird. And I was like, okay. And eventually I was like, oh, it's probably Bug Beans. That makes sense. And they were playing some stuff, but then I think like turn 2, they might have fetched like a Badlands or something. And I was like, what? Like, what is happening? I guess like 5 color. And I'm seeing a variety of things. I saw so many cards I've never seen, a bunch of like enchantments from Final Fantasy and just like all kinds of nonsense. I don't remember the names of any of these cards. And eventually I win, and it's a very long game. It's drawn out by the fact that like I have to read most of what my opponent's playing, and they're not playing particularly quick. But then game 2, my opponent plays like a turn 2 Overlord of the Baelmerk, and I flips over a card that I don't recognize. I pick it up, and it's a Living End.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm against 5 color enchantment Living End. It was not something I was expecting to see. But it was just like wild. So like I'd love to highlight it. Unfortunately, the list didn't get posted. But then this player led to one of my favorite moments of the event. I think you were there for it. Played against another friend of ours, George, in a later round. And George is on Painter, and Painter is sometimes a Blood Moon or Magus of the Moon deck. And a 5 color mana base is, typically speaking, weak to those cards. And so at some point, it is revealed that the Living End player has lightning bolts in their deck to kill Magus.
That's right. I do remember this. Yes.
and George is like, why couldn't you have hit that instead of Living End? What is this deck building? And the guy, just calm as can be, is like, well, you're a red deck. I need an answer for Magus of the Moon. So like I have to put this in. That's why it's in here. It's not bad deck building. And he's just like, why? Like, couldn't you have played anything else? And he's like, everything costs 1. And I'm just like, what about a Braid? And he's just like, oh my God, I forgot about a Braid. And then we just spent like 2 minutes listing 1 in a red spells that deal damage.
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them out there. Fire Ice, the one that's played in like all of the Cascade decks. Yeah.
Fire Ice would be a good one. Incinerate.
Yep. A lot of stuff.
Volcanic Hammer.
But you know what? All of those cost at least twice as much mana as Lightning Bolt. And if you just, shuffle your deck like a hero and always hit the one you need when you're cascading, it's 50% cheaper to play Lightning Bolt than all those other cards that you just named. Right. So there's, I think clearly some genius in it worked out there, right? Like he hit the Living End when he needed it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't think I necessarily remember too much else from the Swiss. Let's see. I know I beat Doomsday. That was kind of fun. I beat Lands. I Force of Willed there. I think they went like turn 1 Malevolent Rumble, and I Force of Willed it, and then they missed their second land drop. So that was kind of sick. and very unlikely. But yeah, I didn't have too much of a problem in the Swiss. I no-sir'd the top eight, and then I promptly got defeated and regretted my decision. And the second I saw what I was playing against, I regretted my decision, but I held firm and lost anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good one. And so, for some additional context for the listeners, the air conditioning in the store was broken, and Sean, the owner, did a great job, like having ice cold waters out with a cooler that was like free for folks that were playing in the event. And he had a bunch of fans and the doors open, doing the best he could to make it like a palatable space for us to play Magic. And, certainly it was an afternoon of, some pretty high level legacy. So, we weren't necessarily complaining about it, but at the same time, when the top eight came around, 7 of us were very clearly like, yeah, let's just chop it and get out of here. And I'll never give anybody a hard time for wanting to play some more Magic. Now, like you can say no, sir, to the split. I do it all the time. So I'll never give anybody a hard time. But in this case, Mapson, this is like, not only was it an own goal, because you died, I also died in the first round of top eight when I was the 1 seed. And so I feel like it was, a team kill as well. Like, you took us both down. So I just want to I'm not bitter, even though it might sound like it, but for the listeners, you need that additional context that it was about 173 degrees and 7 people were snap split, and Mapson from across the room was like, no, we're playing.
And you know what? I stand by my choice.
Good for you. I love it.
I was in the bathroom when the split happened, and I walked out, and there was only one person in top eight I didn't want to play against. And I see I'm paired against that person, of course. And Mark's like, so do you want to split now? And I was just like, no. Like, I said what I said, and I regret it, but I'm going to lose like a man with my dignity, and I'm still saying no to the split. And sure enough, I lost. And you know what? Trevor is such a great guy. After he beat me game 1, he still offered to split with me, and I was like, no.
That's so funny. I love it. I love Trevor. Well, to be fair, we did have to hold the tournament up as you gave him bicycling directions to the store, so maybe he felt like he owed you one, but yeah, there you go. And so, and just for the record, he was on
Gaia's Cradle Nadu.
Also Nadu. There were some birds in the top 8 this day, for sure.
There were 3 Nadu players in the top 8. I also I played next to the third player earlier in the day, and it was funny because he looked over and he's like, man, I feel bad playing this deck next to that because I have like black border duels and like I have like nice versions of things, and I'm just like, it's okay, you're trying. He's like, now I feel even worse.
Yeah, hey, as long as you're out there playing Legacy, you could have black border duels, you could have a piece of paper printed as a proxy and slid into a sleeve, right? As long as you're out there having fun.
They all cast the spells.
That's right. They all kill you when your life total gets to 0.
Any notable moments from your event?
Yeah, well, so I actually just realized I got my events mixed up. I was kind of hinting. I thought you had beat me in the Swiss, but I pulled out my phone and looked back at my notes. Yeah, you looked a little confused when I was saying it, so I said, I think I'm confusing. I was thinking of the Vintage tournament from a few weeks before. I actually was undefeated in Swiss, so I played Sneak and Show in round 1. I went 2-1. I played against Sean, who runs the store. He was on Blue-Red Murktide with the Cutters. I beat him to I played one of the Nadu players, the Bant Nadu player that was on a similar list to yours. Beat him 2-0. Then I got paired down. I thought I could go draw, have a really nice lunch. Didn't really have breakfast. Thought I would, be able to just kind of double draw and get some food and chill.
But the listeners know he was invited to a nice breakfast with his friends.
That is true. I don't really drink that much these days, but big UFC fight, Dustin Poirier's retirement fight the night before this event, and I was out far too late, and I did enjoy some adult beverages, which I don't normally do too often these days. So I was really hurting at the start of this event as well, which is, I think, maybe why my memory of the Swiss was a little bit fuzzy also. So I was dying for some food at this point for sure. And I noticed that I was one of 3 9-pointers after the end of the third round. And so I said, okay, well, one of us is going to get paired down. And since I'm the hungriest, it's 100% going to be me. And so like clockwork, the pairings go up and I got paired against a player who's a regular, very strong. He's always on blue-black reanimator. So that was actually a really fun matchup. A lot of back and forth, a very close 3-game set that I ended up taking 2-1. So I ended up going 4-0 through the first 4 rounds, and then thankfully got to intentionally draw round 5, get some food, fuel up, and again get ready to get walloped by a rematch with Sean on blue-red Murktide Steel Cutter.
Since Mark is leaving out more details,
yeah.
I just want to throw out there, he didn't really have to go get food. One of his friends was nice enough to go and bring it for him.
That is true. That is true. You saw the look on my face when I saw that I got the pair down, and immediately was like, I get to draw, I'll get you food, which I appreciate.
Guy me.
Yeah. So, I think in general, I wouldn't say that there's necessarily any really memorable moments. I would say in that round 4 match against Blue Black, there were some pretty interesting and intricate board states. I wouldn't be able to reconstruct them from memory now, but I just remember we had a pretty long discussion about a couple different things after the match and what we could have done and what we had in hand. And, that game 3 was, I think, incredibly close. So there was some really good Magic played in round 4. Against Sneak and Show in round 1, I mean, I beat, I think, both games that I won, I beat a resolved Show and Tell. I mean, this is a deck that Mystic Forge where you are, let me flip over to my deck, where you are not afraid of a Show and Tell, honestly. Unless you don't have anything to put in with it, but a lot of times you're putting in a Mystic Forge, you're putting in a One Ring. I like to side in my Paradox engine from the sideboard for games 2 and 3. Normally I don't ever bring that in, but that's also a fantastic artifact to be able to put in play off a Show and Tell. So that's always fun. I wouldn't say it's unusual with this deck to beat Sneak and Show after they resolve Show and Tell, because you do it a fair amount, but it's always fun when it happens, and so I was able to do that, so that was pretty fun. But other than that, I mean, a lot of the wins were just you do what the deck does, you get your first 1 or 2 things countered, and then the next thing resolves, and you just kind of snowball from there. So it was I think some relatively straightforward Magic this event here, but fun nonetheless, because it's a powerful deck that does powerful things.
It is a fun deck. Speaking of fun decks, let's transition to what we trophied with. And why don't you go first? Because I think mine transitions pretty well into the following topic. So you have an update on your red-green Eldrazi deck, right?
Yeah. Last time we were talking, I had mentioned that I top 8'd an RCQ with green-red Eldrazi, and that even though I liked the list and it felt powerful, I didn't necessarily love the way that a lot of the current deck lists that people were sort of copying and pasting from Magic Online were built. Sowing Mycospawn and Glaring Fleshraker in particular felt like they didn't belong in the deck, at least the way that I was playing it. They're both undoubtedly very powerful cards, don't get me wrong. But when I'm looking at building around cards like Eldrazi Linebreaker, and I'm playing a 3-mana 2/2 and a 4-mana 3/3, it just sort of felt like it was divergent game plans a little bit, where Sowing Mycospawn helps you control the mid game and get to the late game and cast your 7-drops, but there were so many games where I had a Mycospawn in hand, and it's like, if this is a more aggressive creature, the game is just over. So I went to Scryfall and I just looked for Eldrazi that were modern legal and just started scrolling, because I know that there were a bunch in MH3 that, I hadn't really looked at since they got spoiled. And I came across Wumpus Aberration and I fell in love. And so for folks that have not seen Wumpus Aberration before, it's technically colorless because it's devoid, but it costs 3 and a green. And so my screen keeps jumping around here. And it says, It's a 6/6 trample. So it's a 6/6 trample devoid for 3 and a green. And it says when you cast the spell, if a colorless pip wasn't spent to cast it, target opponent may put a creature from their hand onto the battlefield. So you obviously never want that to happen, but if you look at how the mana base in this deck is constructed, it's literally impossible unless you're under Blood Moon or Harbinger of the Seas. All of your lands can make colorless except potentially a Gemstone Caverns that has a luck counter on it, and you'll need other lands to cast the Wumpus. So pretty much you're almost never in a position where the downside matters. So it's essentially a 6/6 trample for 4 mana that you can ramp out with Eldrazi Temple and make uncounterable with Cavern of Souls because it happens to be an Eldrazi. So when you pair this with Eldrazi Linebreaker, which if you're not familiar, it's 1 colorless red, and the colorless is an actual colorless pip for a 3/3 devoid trample. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control gains haste and gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of Eldrazi you control. So obviously, hasting Wumpus Aberration with Eldrazi Linebreaker will give you, at minimum, an 8/6 haste trample. And so that is a lot of damage. So yeah, I basically took the deck and I cut what I felt were more of like the mid-rangey, slower cards, and I replaced them with Wumpus Aberration, and then the other change was to bring in Eldrazi Mimic, which a blast from the past, but a card that I love, especially from my days of playing this style of deck in Legacy. So it's 2 mana for a 2/1. Eldrazi creature. Whenever another colorless creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may change Eldrazi Mimic's base power and toughness to that creature's power and toughness until the end of the turn. So there's situations where you go turn 1 Eldrazi Mimic, turn 2 Eldrazi Linebreaker, and now you're actually able to attack for 8 damage on turn 2 because the Linebreaker pumps itself and gives it haste, and the Mimic also becomes a 3/3. And then on turn 3, you cast Wumpus Aberration. If they haven't done anything to control your board state, they're pretty much dead. Like, I attacked for lethal on turn 3 quite a few times in this league. So felt really powerful. Other than that, the rest of the deck probably looks pretty similar to the Eldrazi aggro decks. Not the ramp decks, but the aggro decks that have been floating around there. But I personally have really enjoyed the addition of Eldrazi Mimic and Wumpus Aberration over Glaring Fleshraker and Sowing Mycospawn, just because I prefer to play this deck as more of like an in-your-face aggro deck, and those two cards really play, I think, very nicely and powerfully into that type of strategy.
You know, it's funny. Everything you said makes sense, but if you just started like, oh, I'm cutting Sowing Mycospawn and Eldrazi Fleshraker from my deck, like, you're like, oh, you're a crazy person, right? Like,
Right.
I just think those are 2 of the best Eldrazi cards that have been printed. Anyone who knows me well knows Sowing Mycospawn might be, by which I mean it is my least favorite creature card ever printed. And it's just like wild to hear you say, oh, I just like don't want that in my Eldrazi deck. But you're right, it is more of a mid-range card. And if you're looking to kill people, it makes sense. And yeah, I mean, just like that 1, 2, 3 curve you just mentioned sounds really impressive. I know you texted a group chat we're in, like, I'm like, I just want a match with Wumpus Aberration in my deck. I'm the best modern player ever, or something to that effect. And I was like, oh God, there goes Mark being an idiot again. But it makes sense.
Well, so that's on recording. I'm going to make sure that I save that voice clip to my phone. That feels fantastic. But, I certainly wouldn't blame anybody for wanting to register Fleshraker and Mycospawn. And if you find yourself in a position where like you're behind an ensnaring bridge, like you're going to wish that you had the pings from Kozilek's command with the Fleshraker. I didn't find myself in that situation. And you'll see, I do have a Thief of Existence in the main and access to a couple more in the side, just as kind of a bit of a get out of jail free card. But yeah, I mean, I thought Aberration was really good, and I didn't find myself necessarily missing the Fleshraker. And I'll also say that, even though you do miss some ramp not having Sowing Mycospawn in there, I really didn't have problems when it did get to the mid game casting my 7-drops, because between the 4 Writhing Chrysalises and the 4 Kozilek's commands, you do absolutely have ways to just ramp yourself into that 7-drop by turn 3 or 4. And so if you do have a hand that lends to more of a mid-rangey strategy, or perhaps your opponent's had a couple of early removal spells to keep you off the fast kill, you still do get to play a pretty reasonable mid-game as well. I do want to call that out for folks that may want to try this deck. It's certainly not going to be as robust of a mid game as a Sowing Mycospawn deck, or as maybe the rampier version of the Eldrazi deck that also plays the Emrakuls and stuff as a top end. You just don't have the same top end, but you can still play what I would consider to be a very powerful mid game with this deck, between the Sire of the Seven Deaths and the Devourer of Destinies that you have as your top end. There is still a bunch of punch above the 4-drops here, which is nice if you find yourself needing that.
Did you feel there? I mean, I don't know how much you played past that first league, but were there any matchups you played where you felt like you would have rather been the old deck? And were there any matchups in particular where you were like, yes, I'm so smart for playing this build?
I did another league that I 4-1'd right before this one. And so I think it was after I was 2-0 in that league. I texted you and said, if I 5-0, we have to record an emergency episode before I go on vacation. But that didn't happen. It ended up being a 4-1. But yeah, essentially I'm 9-1 with this build in the 2 leagues that I played with it. So small sample size. But in those leagues, I really didn't feel like I missed those cards that I cut. Yeah, I just didn't. The power of Eldrazi Linebreaker along with Wumpus Aberration and Eldrazi Mimic, copying some of your, 6/6s and 7/7s, like, it adds up really, really quickly. And another thing I'll call out that I'll admit I didn't really know how this interaction worked until Magic Online took care of it for me. But when It That Heralds the End, which is the one in a colorless 2/2 that's a Lord for Eldrazi, has a little bit more text as well, but that's the primary reason it's in the deck. If Eldrazi Mimic is copying the power and toughness of an Eldrazi that just entered, and that Eldrazi is pumped by It That Heralds the End, the Mimic will have the larger power toughness. Like, it takes the buff from the Lord into effect when it's copied. So these Mimics actually put in quite a lot of work in the 2 leagues that I played. I mean, they were probably just as impactful of a change to the aggro slant on the list as adding Wumpus Aberration in there as well. I think the 2 go together very, very nicely.
I mean, taking your creature you can play on turn 1 and making it a 6/6, it's like, that's pretty effective.
I mean, early game creatures that scale to the mid and late game traditionally are very powerful. And so, certainly Mimic needs help in scaling to the late game, but, it's doing it with cards that you want to play anyway. So yeah, it was a fun little deck. Am I 100% gonna, bet the house that this is the best version of the deck? No, but, I think it feels really good. In the little bit I've played it, I do think it's the better way to build the aggro version of the deck. So if you want to play aggro Eldrazi, go to Mana Traders or wherever and get your Wumpus Aberrations. I think they're 80 cents right now or something like that. So get them while you can. So yeah, let's talk about your league, Mapson. So you also... I thought I had your deck here. I'll pull it up here while you're talking, but
I think you just had it. So as mentioned, I played Mystic Forge. I don't really remember the details of my league for the most part. This is a deck that has been putting up pretty good results lately. And it's funny because I feel like it's been kind of quietly doing it. Like, I just don't hear people pointing it out. But if you just look at it, like, it's getting a fair number of 5-0s. And then it's gotten like second in a couple of challenges. Can't quite close, but it's getting most of the way there. And I've just been impressed by it. And it's a deck that's, I don't know, I think it's always been kind of a powerful deck, right? Like it's one of those things where you can just kind of go off on turn 2 or 3. And I think I might have even said this on here already, but like if you can just like win on turn 2, like how bad can any matchup be, you know? Like if you can just go, here's turn 1, Grim Monolith, Voltaic Key, untap, play a One Ring, like like sometimes it just doesn't matter if you don't line up well. Like sometimes you just do your thing. You're like, oh, my thing's really busted, and so I'm just going to win anyways. Um, so I wanted to give it a shot. And I'm kind of ruining this for myself by saying it on the podcast. But at Buffalo Chicken Dip this upcoming weekend, I was like, it'd be pretty fun if one of the days I show up with like this deck that plays almost no creatures, and people are like, "Oh, it's the Nadu player. Let me mulligan to Swords to Plowshares," right? Because everybody thinks of me as like Nadu or like green white taps. So it's like, okay, mulligan to removal, and then I'm just like turn 1 ring. I think that's like a pretty good juke. But so I wanted to give it a try. Also, good friend of mine, Mark Mara, is a big fan of this deck. So
It's good.
so I copied a list by Celsius. You were not happy with me because it plays an expedition map, and you wanted me to play second Pithing Needle. And I said, basically, what have you ever done with this deck? I'm copying
It's
this
true.
player. The expedition map was actually good for me. I had games that I won by just being like, okay, I can't really seem to resolve anything, but I'm just gonna make a construct, find a second saga, make a construct, kill you. So that did come up for me. Not having second Pithing Needle really didn't come up for me, but I could see how it could. Um, Outside of that, it was pretty stock. But then I also played this deck in the Legacy Challenge on Sunday. I copied Celsius again, but they had changed their list. So they had changed to a list that was playing 4 defense grids. And I was like, well, that makes sense. There's a lot of blue decks. Let's try out this version. I hated it. There were a number of things I didn't like. First, they dropped the land count from 20 to 19, and I don't know how many one land hands I had to throw back, but there was a lot of them. So that was really frustrating. They kind of dropped some of the bullets that I didn't necessarily care about, like the Soul Guide Lantern, and I can't remember what else got dropped for the defense grids, and I was okay losing those cards, but the defense grids just like weren't good. I went 5-2 and I played almost all non-blue decks, and I actually even against the blue decks, I kind of wanted access to instant speed Kozilek's command. Like I played against Reanimator, and like yes, I didn't want them to force my things, but I also wanted to be able to stop them from resolving their reanimate spells. But I also played against like 10 Fins, where again I wanted instant speed Kozilek's command. I played against mono red, where it was like these defense grids don't matter. I played against green decks where it's like, okay, yes, I don't really want them to defend, like force a vigor me, but also I just have this card that doesn't do anything. So it's like they're still almost getting an advantage because I could instead have something that impacted the board in some way. So it was just like pretty underwhelming. And I know you were saying you felt like even against the blue decks, you just have so many threats these days that you can just jam, 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 not worry about the counter magic. Yeah, definitely did not like defense grid.
Yeah, that was kind of my take on it as well. I've played a lot with grid, without grid. Grid is no vexing bauble for folks that are just kind of looking to make that swap. That's just cope to think that it is. Um, I mean, defense grid's fine. Obviously, the deck puts up results with it. It puts up results without it. Like our good friend Nick DeJean, who plays a lot of this deck, I know he's a big defense grid fan, and like I know, for example, it's allowed him to do things like beat Tameo ult because they'll ult on their turn, but then like they can't cast a bunch of stuff through defense grid, or maybe they can only cast one counter through grid, and you go to your turn and you have a fighting chance. But I think, to your point, for every time that you actually want grid, there's a bunch of times where you're like, man, I'd want anything else. And the fact that you now have Flesh Raker in the deck as an additional line of attack, I think if you're expecting a lot of maybe like 8 force, 4 consign, like Jeskai control type decks, okay, like have some defense grids available maybe in your sideboard. But I'm with you that against the Delver style decks, the tempo decks, you can usually just run them out of threats. And for me, the more important card in that type of matchup is Pithing Needle, which is why I'm really big on 2 needles right now. I think, just being able to blind needle Wasteland on turn 1 and know that you're going to actually be able to develop your mana and play a game is much more valuable than the equity that you get from defense grid, because if you can make it to the mid and long game, you will win. Your threats are just better and you snowball more. And I think Pithing Needle does a better job of helping you get there than defense grid does. So I don't know if you necessarily agree with that, but, curious. I also want to hear a little bit, because I'm looking at the mana base of this deck maps and the one that you played in the challenge, and it's not on Urza's Workshop. It's on City of Traders, which I think also makes Candelabra of Taunos a little bit worse. So I'm curious. You mentioned frustration with one land hands, but I'm also wondering how you felt about the swap from Urza's Workshop to City of Traders, where you get maybe some more immediate acceleration, but maybe again at the cost of some of that big mana mid game.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I think it makes sense if you're playing defense grid that you want to have more soul lands so you can play it
Yeah.
more reliably on turn 1. Um, I think without defense grid, you're kind of more willing to play a longer game, right? So having a land that can tap for 1 million as the game goes on kind of makes sense. The candelabras were still fine, because there was definitely times where I would go turn 1 whatever land candle, turn 2 City of Traders, tap for 3, pay 1, untap the city, tap for 2, play 1 ring or whatever. And so it was fine. I did feel like I liked the first mana base more, but I'm not sure if that was I didn't like City of Traders or if it was I didn't like 19 lands. Well, I know I didn't like 19 lands. I definitely want 20. And I boarded in there was 2 Besages on the sideboard. I just boarded them in all the time because I was I need mana. Um,
I don't think that's what they're supposed to be there for.
I know for a fact that's not what they're there for, but look, man, a fact is a fact. I needed mana.
Yeah, yeah.
So I I th- I think I like the workshops, or yes, the Ursus workshops more.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, I don't know, because in the late game, like you said, they can produce a lot of mana, which is really cool. I don't think it's that hard for them to produce 2. I also ran into issues, and again, you're being kind of landlight, and then the city is disappearing was very frustrating. Especially if you had a city and then you had to play a second land, and then that land gets wasteland. It's what am I even doing here? Um, things overall went well. Like I'm saying all these negative things, and I really shouldn't complain too much because I only lost 4 games. But it still felt worse.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. Yeah. And, just looking at the mana base, obviously Planar Nexus and Urza's Tower together is fantastic for folks that maybe aren't familiar. Urza's Tower is the old land from Antiquities that basically says if you also control an Urza's Mine and an Urza's Power Plant, it taps for 3 mana. Otherwise, it taps for 1. And Planar Nexus taps for 1. And it does a bunch of other stuff, but primarily the line that matters is that it's all land types. So basically, if you have an Urza's Tower and a Planar Nexus, it taps for 4 mana. And Urza's Workshop, which we were just talking about, is another land. It's an Urza's land, but not a tower or a power plant. But it also says it taps for a colorless, or if you have Metalcraft, so 3 or more artifacts in play, it taps for an amount of mana equal to the number of Urza's lands that you control. So it itself is an Urza's land. Your Planar Nexuses are Urza's lands. Your Urza's Sagas are Urza's lands. And your Urza's Towers are Urza's lands. So it can produce, I've had situations where, you have 2 or 3 of those in play, a Candelabra, plus a couple of other Urza's lands. You're very quickly tapping for 20 or 30 mana, which with Kozilek's Command is basically game over at that point, because you essentially get to stack your deck. And, I think that losing the very high end of that by cutting Workshop takes away some pretty important lines in the deck. So yeah, not surprised to hear that you preferred the other mana base. Just in my experience playing a whole bunch of different mana bases with this deck, including some that went all the way to play Crystal Veins to make 2 mana on turn 1 as well, alongside Ancient Tombs and City of Traders. Not surprised to hear that the Urza's Workshop build felt a bit better, because I'm there as well, and that's why I love Pithing Needle so much in this deck, is because it helps you protect that very powerful mana base.
So 2 things. One, just random thought. Kozilek's Command was so frustrating to cast, just because the number of times I would target once and then start trying to click the mana without thinking about it, and then it'd be like, oh, clearly you're not trying to cast this. Start all the way from square one. And you'd think I would have learned after the first or second time, but I'm clearly not that smart. And then number 2, kind of going into the spoiler talk, the first card is Tezzeret, which a lot of people are very excited for in this Forge deck. And even though we were just talking about me playing it, you have a lot more experience playing this deck than I do. So I'm kind of curious your thoughts on if it slots in, or just, and if so, like, how do you think the deck needs to be built?
Yeah. So why don't we jump over and take a look at Tezzeret? So Tezzeret, Cruel Captain, a colorless planeswalker, which we obviously love on this podcast. So something to go potentially alongside Karn the Great Creator in the Forge deck, as we were just discussing. So it's 3 colorless. It's 3 generic, I should say, for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. It has the ability, whenever an artifact you control enters, put a loyalty counter on Tezzeret. Did you have a lot of artifacts entering when you played this deck, Mapson? Do you have a lot of artifacts entering?
Not as many as I would have liked at times.
Not as many as you would have liked, but there were a few. You think this might get a few loyalty counters?
There was a non-zero number.
Yeah. So it has a 0 ability. Untap target artifact or creature. If it's an artifact creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So that essentially functions as additional keys for untapping your monoliths, untapping your rings, untapping your Mystic Forges, whatever you might need to untap. It has a -3, and again, it starts with 4 loyalty, so you can do this immediately. It says search your library for an artifact card with mana value 1 or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. So this can find things like Pithing Needle, Candelabra, Expedition Map if you use Poor Judgment and register that instead of a second Pithing Needle.
Like, it's literally my name. I have to do it.
Okay, that's fair. When you put it that way, I will still judge you, but I'll do it silently. So a lot of great 1s and 0s. With Tezzeret here, you can even do things like get your 1-off Mox Opal or Lotus Petals, things like that, if you're setting up for a specific amount of mana next turn. And by the way, when you cast those cards, it puts more loyalty counters on Tezzeret when they enter. So you're immediately getting a bit of a rebate on that -3 if you put the thing into play right away. And then finally, it has a -7. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, put 3 +1/+1 counters on target artifact you control. If it's not a creature, it becomes a 0/0 robot artifact creature. So first of all, robots, obviously cool. But yeah, I mean, there's a win condition effectively stapled onto this utility planeswalker. So it does a lot. I think like the obvious spot that it slots in is potentially trimming a few of the Voltaic keys and sticking some of these in and maybe going from there. But curious what your thoughts are on that as well, Maps. And like, I mean, for me, I'm definitely looking forward to trying it. I haven't had a chance to yet since the cards have been added to Moto only just in the last day or two, and I haven't been home to play. But I mean, I think it's definitely got a home from what I can see, but curious what you think.
Even if you were home to play, it's still going to be difficult to get the cards for a bit, right? But I am.
Are they like not on rental services yet?
I haven't checked. They may be, but even like whenever there's a new card and it like sees a lot of play up front, it's hard because the rental services have to buy them, right? So it takes time for them to buy it, and then
It's probably like
everybody's kind of looking
900
for the card
tickets.
at once. I'm curious. I know I have sourced at least one because I want to try it in the challenge tomorrow. I think the card is good. It's like awkward to just, yeah, it's not on Mana Trader's
Yes,
end.
I
I
was
just
gonna say
checked.
it's not even
Uh,
on here. Yeah.
um, oh, it's funny. I looked away from the screen so I could figure it out, and I guess you were also checking.
Oh yeah. I pulled up Mana Traders and just typed it into the deck builder to see how many ticks in it. I was confused because it didn't even pop up. So yeah, it must not even be available yet.
Yeah, it's listed on GoatBots. GoatBots has it for like, whew,
Hold on,
uh,
let me guess. I'm gonna say 45 ticks.
uh, you're pretty close. So for the regular, it's buy list at 40, selling at 47.
Oh, all right.
For the borderless, it's 30 and 40. But so it's it's awkward because I feel like you can't just slot it in over key, right? Because like he does the thing where you can have it with your Grim Monolith on turn one to let you play one of your 4 drops. You can't do that with this, right? Like you can still play Grim Monolith, Tezzeret, untap Grim Monolith, and you're just like, I wish I had one more mana. Um, so like it's a little awkward there. And I mean it's still very strong, right? You're still going to be able to play it on turn two. If you have like a Lotus Petal, you can still do it. So I think it's good, but like you don't want to shave too many keys because I think you need them. I think you can shave some of the utility stuff, like maybe you can shave Candelabra, right? Like that card's sick, and I kind of just want the flex of putting a Candelabra on the table. Um, I don't actually own one, but you do, so I still
I
get
do.
to I get to pretend that I own one. So
Yeah, yeah.
I kind of want that, that sick flex, but like,
Well, this
if you
helps you find the candelabra too, right? Which like if you start trimming too many of those, it also like reduces the Tezzeret value a bit.
Yeah, I think that's okay though. So you can cut that. I feel like I'm never happy when I draw the basalt monolith. So I feel like
Yeah.
you
Yep.
can cut that. But then the question is, how many do you play? Like, I think you probably want to play like three. Three is a good number where you'll likely see one per game, but like not get clogged up with them in your opening hand. And then I do think there is the question, like you were saying, if you cut Candelabra, that's reducing value from the Tezzeret. But I don't actually know how much you want to put in just to find with the Tezzeret, right? Like, because you want cards that are going to be good when you draw them. I don't want to just like put corner case cards in my combo deck. Like, even something like Soul Guide Lantern, I played and I was just not happy with it. And like, obviously, it's great if you draw it against like Blue Black Reanimator. But like most other times, I was like, I don't really want to like pay the 2 mana to cantrip this.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put in a bunch of stuff for Tezzeret, and maybe that's wrong. Like maybe I'll play it and be like, oh man, I wish I could have access to this or that. I'm just
Yeah.
not
I,
sure.
I think you're right because especially about like Soul Guide Lantern because I've never been a big fan of playing that card. I've begrudgingly been playing it recently just as a nod to the fact that blue black is it's going to be everywhere. You can't ignore it. And, sometimes they can just turn to Atraxa and you need to be able to stop that at least some of the time. And so I sort of begrudgingly have a Soul Guide Lantern in there now. I know I don't want to turn this into a BNR podcast, but like perhaps if WotC were to do something that a lot of people want them to do around the blue black deck at the next BNR window, like maybe we can go back to like not having a main deck Soul Guide because for quite a long time, like I didn't like having those kind of like one-off silver bullets in the deck either, even though you are an Urza Saga deck and already had reasonable ways to fetch them. I prefer a much more streamlined approach to the deck as well. Like just like set up your Haymaker, cast your Haymaker, draw a ton of cards, and cast more Haymakers. Like I think if you just follow that blueprint, like you'll do pretty well with this deck an awful lot of the time. And so I don't really like a lot of the diversions of like the tooly kind of one drops like Soul Guide Lantern, but I just feel like you kind of have to have it right now. But I think that again, like with the basalt monolith, it's the worst mana rock in the deck for sure. Also, the static ability on this rewards you for playing 0 drops. And so there was a time when this deck would play 3 or 4 Mox Opals alongside the 4 Lotus Petals. And so, perhaps this, if Tezzeret does end up becoming a very strong addition to this deck, maybe it slants the way that you want to build Mystic Forge back to a little bit more of that like 0 drop, 1 drop based mana base, where you're playing a few more Mox Opals because they're going to trigger Tezzeret. It's also going to potentially give you like that 1 extra mana on turn 1 that you miss out on by playing Tezzeret without the key, right? Like if you have that 1 extra mana, like that kind of puts you back to where you were. I don't know. We'll have to see, but there's definitely some exciting things to try out here. And I there's a new Mystic Forge Discord that just popped up that I saw on Reddit and joined. It only had like 25 people or so when I joined, so I don't even know if it's like catching on or what. I don't typically look at Discord too much, but a couple of people were saying that I think it was, what was the event called? Like Impact or something?
Impact Returns.
Impact
Yes.
Returns. There was a couple of players that played Tezzeret in Forge. I didn't actually look at the lists, but I know the chat in the Mystic Forge Discord was that the feedback from the players that registered it said it felt powerful and that they were happy that it was in the deck. And so, some real world examples from a decent sized tournament early is, a couple of the Mystic Forge players that did pretty decent at that tournament seemed to be happy with Tezzeret, which, is a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely down to try it. I was watching Impact Returns. I still have a lot more to watch. Plus, I was kind of distracted. So they had like the Spanish Nationals on Friday, so I've watched all of that. Which, if anybody enjoys watching coverage, I will say it was definitely a treat to see Glimpse Elves like doing its thing. Glimpse Elves made it to the finals, and
Let's
so
go.
yeah, it was a bit of a shame because I got to watch it dunk on Mystic Forge, and it's like, okay, I kind of want to root for my new friend, but also just like it was pretty sick to see like the Mystic Forge player be like, turn 2 Mystic Forge, and else be like, I don't care. I'm just gonna put like
Yeah.
50 power in play. Go. Can you win? Probably not.
It's sort of like how Forge feels against the show and tell. You're like, yeah, whatever. Like that's sometimes how the Elves player feels against you. They're like, yeah, that's fine. Are you passing the turn?
Yeah, dude, they didn't even have a collector goof, but they were able to like they cast like 2 glimpses and besaged both of the lands
Oh
from
my
the other
God,
side.
really?
We're
Oh
just like,
no.
start with 0 mana and see what you can do. If you
My
pass, I
goodness.
have 16 creatures, a Gaia's Cradle, and an Allosaurus Shepherd. Uh,
Oh my goodness. Well, a pro tip for the listeners, Boseiju is a legal target for Pithing Needle to shut down the channel. Just saying, just saying. All right. We've talked a lot about Tezzeret maps, and what about in the context of Legacy? What about Modern? Do you think that there's anywhere in Modern that this kind of slots in right away? There's nowhere obvious to me looking at it, especially now that Breach is gone. Not sure what your thoughts are.
yeah, so I do actually think there's more homes than just Forge for it in Legacy too.
Oh, sure.
For what it's worth, like I think you can possibly play a kitten deck, and then like that's actually probably it. But
So like Coveted Jewel type, like Displacer Kit and Blinky Blink type thing.
yeah, something.
Yeah.
I haven't mapped it all out, but Callum Smith was like talking about it, and it sounded interesting. I was like, oh, I kind of want to burn some play points doing that.
Well, it is interesting because if you have Tezzeret and Displacer Kitten, right? Like you can minus Tezzeret to get a 0, play it, and use the kitten to flicker the Tezzeret. So you can effectively go get all the
Exactly.
0s out of your deck, make mana with them, then go do the same thing for all of the 1s, or maybe not all of them, but like enough that you amass a giant advantage. So that is kind of neat. I mean, it takes a 3 mana permanent and a 4 mana permanent and a third card, but when you get going, that does sound fun.
I mean, I think like it requires those cards, but those cards are also just powerful. Plus, since you're playing Displacer Kit now, you're a blue deck, so you have access to Force Will, possibly more counter magic. But anyways, in modern, Brute Scale can play this deck or this card. I mean, I don't know if that's good or not yet, right? But it can tutor up Brute Scale, so it's one more way to do it. Some of the lists play an artifact heavy slant, some don't. But if you do play the artifact heavy slant, then it gives you kind of another robust win condition, right? And I I think that is a deck that sometimes can feel a bit anemic to me. So just getting to kind of power things up and turn like your Mox Opals into threads, or turn the Brute Scales, or not the Brute Scales, the Blade of the Blood Chiefs into threads. I think that like could be something. Plus, if you're playing Ancient Stirrings, like you have like easy way to find this powerful card. So I think there could be something there.
Yeah, worth noting in Brood Scale, this would be a lot better, except that for the 0, it says untap target artifact or creature. If it's an artifact creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So when you said Brood Scale, my immediate thought was, oh, can the 0 also start the chain by putting a counter on the Brood Scale to get a guy? It won't for anybody listening thinking it might, because it's not an artifact creature. So everything you said is true, and I think that would be a neat card to try out in the deck for sure. But do not try to do that in paper, where you use 0 on the Brood Scale and put a counter on it. That is not legal unless you've somehow also made it an artifact.
Well, clearly you just play liquid metal coating first, and then you turn your Brute Scale into an artifact, and then
Listen, I'm not going to say that you shouldn't play liquid metal coating, but this might not be the deck for it. Do it anyway. Do it anyway.
well, now you could be a Karn deck too, right? So like,
You're speaking my language. Then we can just cut the Brood Scales and the Blade of the Blood Chiefs and add some more artifacts. Yeah, we're good, man. We're good. We're on the right track now. All right, we should probably talk about some other cards. Tezzeret does seem pretty cool, though. So next one up, I know both of us took a good look at these warp cards, especially in the context of Legacy with Up the Beanstalk. These seem like some pretty obvious ways to cheat in some 5+ mana guys in order to trigger beans. Are they good is maybe a little bit less obvious, but what do you think here about Quantum Riddler? Let me read it first. So it's 3 blue, so it's 5 mana for a Sphinx, for a 4/6 flyer. When it enters, draw a card. As long as you have 1 or fewer cards in hand, this is a separate ability, so it's not tied to the card draw. It says as long as you have 1 or fewer cards in hand, if you would draw 1 or more cards, you draw that many cards +1. And then it also has Warp for 1 and a blue. So Warp is you can essentially cast it for the Warp cost. But then at the end of the turn, it gets exiled, and you're allowed to cast it from exile later on. So almost like a little bit like an adventure, except there's not like a second half to it. It's literally you just get the creature itself for that turn. So Quantum Riddler seems sick. Do you think it's good enough for beans in Legacy?
I don't think so, but it is sick, and I am open to being wrong. It's just like one of those things where how often are you going to be out of cards, right? Like we're talking about a deck that's built on card advantage. So it usually has cards in hand. So then it's just like kind of a 5 mana draw to, or it could be a 2 mana draw to, but like that's also just pretty good. So like I think the floor on it is reasonably high, but I don't know that it fully crosses over.
So that's, I think, very true for the Bug Beans deck, which is the most popular variant right now. I have played a decent amount of the 4 and 5 color Beans decks as well, that will play things like Leyline Binding and Solitudes, and it's typically really just for access to the white cards is what the 4th color is for. And so, yeah, you're right that like, you don't often find yourself empty-handed, but if you're playing with Solitudes and you have more pitch cards and maybe this allows you to build the deck in a way where you're playing more pitch cards as well, because you're less afraid of being empty-handed because you can refuel more effectively. I don't know. Free cards are really good. Do you think that that's still true in like maybe a 4 or 5 color shell with some more of the pitch elementals and other free spells?
Yeah, that's interesting. Then there comes the question of space. So like I'm still not convinced, but like I said, I'm not opposed to trying it. I think maybe it's more likely in the 80 card versions where you don't always have
Yes.
access to your beans. Plus you can like flicker with Yorion, especially if you like play it for warp and then have 5 mana left and Yorion it. Because if you flicker it, it just stays around. So it's really good with like Yorion or Ephemerate. At that, and in that scenario where you pay 2 mana, draw 2, maybe 3 cards off of it. Well, I guess it would be 2, but like 2 or 3 cards off of it and get a 4/5. Like that's pretty sick.
Yeah, and I know that this is Christmas land and just a made up scenario, but in my head, I mean, I'm thinking, hey, you're in a resource war. You're playing a 4-color beans pile. You're close to empty-handed. So is your opponent. You've got a beanstalk in play. You draw this card. It's your only card in hand. All right. Well, you warp it. So as soon as you warp it, you trigger beanstalk. You get a card. So now you have 1 card in hand. This thing enters. It triggers. You get a card, and then its ability says, as long as you have 1 or fewer cards in hand, draw that many +1, right? So that would put a second card in your hand. So you only draw the 1. But now let's say one of those is like a Leyline Binding, or you just drew Solitude plus white card, right? Well, if you cast that Leyline Binding, you're down to 1 card in hand. You're getting 2 cards off of that Beans trigger while this is in play. Or if it was like Solitude plus white card and you pitch it to kill their thing, you're getting 2 more cards from that bean trigger because the Quantum Riddler is going to double the beans draws. That seems so good. And like, I know that you never want to be in that position as the beans player. But this card seems like it could be really good at refilling if you do have to empty the hand to stay alive. And so that seems interesting to me. And the fact that it's blue means you get to pitch it to Force of Will and Force a Negation. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think I'm with you that I don't think it's quite good enough, but it's a really neat card, and Warp seems like the sort of thing where, if they don't tune it exactly right, there could be some game-breaking stuff that happens, and so, it'll be interesting to see how these things develop. There was another Warp card.
Wait,
did you want to say anything else about
sorry.
Riddler? Yeah. What else do you think about Riddler?
Because it's possible I might have just misheard you. But if I did hear you right, I just want to clarify. You said empty-handed, have a beans out, you cast this, beans triggers, and then it enters, and you draw a card.
Yeah, a card. Yeah.
No, you would draw 2.
You would draw. So you do get the second card right away. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're right. Because you only have 1 in hand, and then that second draw gets replaced by a draw 2. Yep. You're right. Yeah. So that's even better. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also like kind of sick if you like, let's say you play this in Doomsday. You can like cast it, and then with the trigger on the stack, you sack your hand to your LED, and now you break into your pile.
Yeah. LED letting you empty your hand to get 2 cards. That's interesting as well, especially because Doomsday. And I'm not a big Doomsday gamer, so people, the Doomsday players might be typing up hate mail right now, like, you guys aren't even close. But I mean, like, Doomsday has been known, to play a couple of creatures, even in the sideboard, as like a juke plan for when you side all of your spells or all of your removal out. Now it's typically like Murktide Regent or something like that. But if this also has utility from your hand after building the pile and stuff, like that's potentially something worth looking at as well.
Yeah, because like its effect is probably worse than just like playing Predict, but it being a creature is like kind of nice.
Yeah, we're talking about the warp piece of it, but 3 blue is like, I mean, not the reason that you play the card, but you can legitimately cast that and start turning it sideways as well. Like 3 blue is not an uncastable cost.
Yeah, not in your Dark Ritual deck. But anyways, now we can move on.
Yeah, so Pinnacle Emissary is the next card up. So this is 1 blue-red, so 3 mana for a 3/3 artifact creature robot. It says whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 drone artifact creature token with flying, and this token can block only creatures with flying. And now for the fun part, it has warp for a hybrid blue-red. So for either a blue or a red, you can warp this into play. So why would you want this? What's this do on turn 1 that's so fun?
Yeah, so it's interesting because this card isn't too dissimilar from cards that we've kind of seen before that don't see a lot of play, right? Like it's got a very similar effect to like Third Path Iconoclast, Saheeli's Sublime Artificer, Psy Master Thopterist, which so glad that card doesn't see play anymore.
I actually thought of Psy like as the first comparison when I saw this card get spoiled. Psy was what immediately jumped to mind.
And I just remember my Merit just getting like stonewalled by those stupid Thopters.
Yes.
But anyway, so this card, I mean, the first thing is like 1 mana is significantly cheaper than 2 or 3, right? And the mana is just easier. And you might be thinking, well, this card doesn't stick around, so it's not as good. And like, that's a fair point. But a lot of these artifact decks play a bunch of cheap stuff that you kind of spam out early, right? So being able to like play this on turn 1 for like blue or red, and then just go like Mox Opal, Box Amber, Mishra's Bauble. Actually, you don't even need to cast the Mishra's Bauble, right? Like if you just play this and go like Mox Opal, trigger it, you already have 3 artifacts, so you have Metalcraft. Now you can play like an Emery or Tamiyo, and then if you play like a Mishra's Bauble, you can make another thing. So I think it's very easy to just like play a lot early and get the advantage. Another thing that's nice is a second copy of this does trigger the first copy, right? Versus like with Third Path Iconoclast, like you can't double, like it doesn't trigger itself, and with Saheeli you can't even have 2 out at the same time. So just being able to do that is really nice. And then especially now that Kappa Cannoneer is legal in the format, like I've already heard stories of people playing turn 1 and 2 Kappas off of the back of this card. And when you think about like the sequence I just said, it doesn't even sound that hard. You just need go turn 1, Spire Bluff, Canal, play this, play Opal. You have 3 artifacts out. Play Amber. You have 5 artifacts out. Play Mishra's Bauble. Now you can play your Kappa Cannoneer. And you can even crack the Mishra's Bauble afterwards to help fuel up for the turn afterwards, so that Kappa can go nuts.
Yeah, that is a pretty fast start, and I have certainly resolved my fair share of early Kappas in Legacy, and just the fact that that's even a potential in Modern is definitely a powerful thing that's worth exploring. I think also, I know we've said it, but really worth noting is that this is an artifact. So you mentioned it as helping to turn on Metalcraft early in that scenario with essentially just a single 0 drop behind it. I mean, also, these decks tend to play Emery. Emery can bring this back. You can't warp it from your graveyard. You have to warp from your hand, but you can still pay like 3 mana is not a ton of mana. Like these decks will very likely have that available on turn 2. So yeah, also nice that this itself is an artifact, not just for Metalcraft, but the fact that you're almost certainly already playing Emery and other things like Kappa Cannoneer that care about artifacts entering, and this is just more synergy in that direction. So I was originally not as high on this card, but I think I may be coming around to it. I really wish it was a 2/4, but it would probably be a little bit too good with 4 base toughness there. So I think I can live with it being a 3/3 for now, but we'll see if that's still true after testing it a little bit. Anything else you want to say about Pinnacle Emissary, Mapson?
No, not really. Plus, we have like a few other cards to talk about, and we're already running long, so we should probably like get going.
Yeah. Well, I guess the good news is that the 3 cards we just talked about are really the only 3 that we were, like, I would say somewhat excited or greater on. And so the rest of these cards are really going to be I'm not necessarily jacked up on any of them, and I don't think you are either, but these are cards that are either potentially upgrades or side grades to some fringe cards already, or some cards that are, perhaps a new spin on an effect that was potentially fringe playable before. And so, I wouldn't necessarily go out and buy play sets of all of these next cards. Can if you want. I'm not a cop. But, these are not necessarily cards we expect to make a huge splash, but maybe are worth at least having a set of eyes on and talking about a little bit. So the first one is Emergency Eject, 2 and a white. It's an instant. Destroy target non-land permanent. Its controller creates a lander token. And the lander is an artifact that has 2 tap sack. Search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So I guess the first question is, how good do you think a lander is actually going to be? Because the way I'm kind of evaluating a lander is above a map but below a clue. Where in the token hierarchy do you feel like a lander is from a value perspective?
I guess that's a reasonable place to put it. I don't know. 2 mana is a lot for somebody to have laying around, right? And not every deck even plays basics.
Right.
So I think it's going to be pretty bad. Like, it's funny because they're pretty good in limited, but I just think like paying 2 mana for a basic's like not really where you want to be, right? Like,
Yeah, like
think about it,
nobody's
it's just
playing Farseek effects and stuff in Modern these days, and so this is like a similar type of effect that your opponent didn't build their deck to take advantage of.
now then if you're triggering my Kappa Cannoneer with it, well, that's a different story. But yeah, so the token's not a big downside, but I also just don't think this card's very good. 3 mana is a lot for this effect. I think it's like worse than Get Lost.
I agree. 3 mana is a lot there. The way that I was looking at this card is it's essentially unconditional removal. It's destroy target non-land permanent. So yeah, 3 mana is a lot. It hits enchantments, it hits creatures, it hits planeswalkers, it hits non-land sagas, including like the new summons. Like, again, like I don't think that this is going to be in every sideboard everywhere, but it's an instant and it solves a lot of problems, and it only needs a single white pip is the only colored pip in the spell. So, I just don't think we've had a card like this before, and so that's this flexible. And if lander tokens turn out to be like really, really low value, maybe this does see some play in sideboards. If lander tokens turn out to be really good and we've kind of misevaluated them and they're better than a clue, this might be a bit of a hard sell. But I don't think that's going to be the case. Next one up, Hard Light Containment. So this is 1 white for an enchantment aura, enchant artifact you control. When this aura enters, exile target creature an opponent controls until this aura leaves the battlefield. So it's effectively an O-ring that you have to stick on an artifact. An enchanted permanent has ward 1. So notably, not Hard Light Containment itself, but the artifact that it enchants gets ward 1. So I know you weren't super high on this card. My commentary was Chain to the Rocks sees play a little bit, and this is sort of like a Chain to the Rocks for the indestructible artifact lands. Like there is the blue-white artifacts deck, or sometimes there's a Jeskai version, maybe the Pinnacle, whatever it's called, the Pinnacle Emissary we were just talking about. Like maybe there's a Jeskai artifacts deck. For me, I look at this and I say, hey, this is kind of neat if you stick it on an indestructible artifact land. But I think that's probably the only place that something like this would see play. But since those lands do see play, and Chain to the Rocks pops up every now and then, maybe Hard Light Containment sees playing some artifact sideboards, but I'm personally not a big fan of these O-ring effects. I don't even really like Leyline Binding or any of like the good ones, so you probably won't see too many of these, but it is a card worth at least calling out. Anything to add, Mapson?
It's got good artwork.
It does have good artwork. All right, moving on. Lightstall Inquisitor, 1 white for a 2/1 creature angel wizard. Notably a wizard, so it powers up Flame of Anor. Just kidding, I don't think they go together. But 2/1 vigilance for a white, and it says, when this creature enters, each opponent exiles a card from their hand. Notably, they do choose. So when this creature enters, each opponent exiles a card from their hand and may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. Each spell cast this way costs 1 more to cast, and each land played this way enters tapped. So it's effectively a 2/1 vigilance for 1 mana that is a speed bump for something in their hand. What do you think?
So you and I have talked about this card before.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty lackluster. I think it's going to be good in Standard. I think it's going to be good in Pioneer. But this is an Eternal format. We don't care about those formats. I don't think it's going to be good in Modern or Legacy. Definitely not in Vintage.
Yeah, I think if it does see play anywhere, it would be in a deck that has blink effects, like that would be playing Felia, for example. The way I look at this is the bar for a 1-drop is not super high, and this has a lot of text on it for 1 mana. And when you look at Modern and Legacy decks, they're so streamlined that every card has a purpose. Like, people aren't playing cards just for fun, that they're like, oh yeah, let me just exile this extra one. It's not a big deal that, like, I'm down this land that wasn't supposed to enter tapped, but now it does. Or, there are some number of times that they'll just exile a surveil land from their hand. And hey, that's fine. But there will be other times where I think the thing that they exile may matter, and you wouldn't play this as the only tax effect. Like, you're probably playing this in a deck that has other types of tax effects or other stacks effects, or similar things that can layer on top here. And so I think, like, again, it doesn't have to solve world hunger for 1 mana. But I agree with you. Probably not good enough, but worth at least taking a look at, especially in decks that may already benefit from blink effects. Because if you can stack up 2 or 3 of these, it can really be a pain in the butt for the opponent if you rip a couple cards out of their hand early on with it.
So my thing is that this is like, it's not even as painful as a mulligan is, right? Like, I understand, yes, I want to have these cards in my hand, but I don't think having 1 land come into play tapped is that big of a deal, or something that you're not going to play until later in the game is a big deal. I just like, and I hear what you're saying about, like, there's going to be other taxing effects, but like, those decks just aren't good.
Yeah. That we can agree on. Next up, Scout for Survivors. This is a sorcery for 2 and a white, so a 3-mana sorcery. Return up to 3 target creature cards with total mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put a +1/+1 counter on each of them. So literally the only reason that I put this on the list is because you had told me last week that Heliod was putting up some results somewhere. And so when I read this card, I thought to myself, well, hey, that's cute. It can bring back both Heliod and the Walking Ballista from the graveyard if they happen to be there. And the Walking Ballista will live because the +1/+1 counter is added to it. So I don't know that there's too much more to say about that. I don't actually think that this is really playable because, sadly, I don't think Heliod is actually really playable, as much as I loved playing that deck when it was tier 1 and tier 2 years ago. But I don't think we need to really add anything else here. But if you are one of the 3 remaining Heliod gamers, and you also happen to be listening to this podcast, check out Scout for Survivors. That might be a good one to have in your toolbox. Next up, consult the star charts. I actually turned on Aspiring Spike after I had added this card to the list, and he was playing this, so I immediately felt vindicated, but I don't know if it's actually good. I didn't get to see him cast it, but I saw it in the hand. So this card is 1 and a blue, and it also has a kicker of 1 and a blue. So it'll either cost you 2 mana or 4 mana. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of lands you control. Put 1 of those cards into your hand. If this spell was kicked, put 2 of those cards into your hand instead, and then the rest go on the bottom in a random order. So it's an instant. It lets you dig. It scales with the game a bit with the kicker. You think this might see play in some control decks, Mapson?
No, but I am open to being wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe, actually.
It seems like it's pretty powerful. I mean, obviously it's card selection, not card advantage until it gets kicked. But, the fact that it's an instant and you can play it in their end step and maybe look at the top 4 or 5 cards, a lot of times when I've tried to play control decks in current modern, my problem has been that you have to play such a spread of answers to stand a chance as a control deck against how wide the format is currently. And you don't always draw them. And the effects that let you get really deep into your library usually are either sorceries like Stock Up, or are just like much more expensive, like Memory Deluge with Flashback, for example. And so, like, I look at Consult the Star Charts as, it scales with the game based on how much land you have. It solves that problem of helping you find, whatever the answer is for the matchup that you're in. And if you kick it and you're looking at like 10 cards and you pick two because you're in the late game, like it really feels like you pull really far ahead. But yeah, the fact that like it's selection and not advantage unless it's kick, though, it may not do enough. But I think it's at least worth looking, especially if you're, like a Jeskai control gamer or 4-color control game or something like that. I definitely don't think it's good enough for Legacy, but potentially worth peeking at if you were already fiddling around with stuff like Brain Surge. In Modern, like if you wanted a deck that wanted a card like that, it may be worth taking a peek at Consult the Star Charts.
I think this card would be a banger in Rugscape Shift, but unfortunately, that deck doesn't really exist anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, man, maybe a few years too late here for this one, but I agree that would be a banger in Rugscape Shift. All right, we have just a few left here. Next one up, Archenemy's Charm, black, black, black. What a casting cost! It's an instant. Choose one. Exile target creature or planeswalker. Return one or two target creature and or planeswalker cards from your graveyard to your hand. Or the third mode is put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature you control. It gains a lifelink until the end of turn. So obviously, I think the best mode's the first one, exile target creature or planeswalker. But as with any of the commands, the power comes in the flexibility. So I guess my question for you, Mapson, is like, do you care about either of the other two modes on this card?
I think that I think they can all reasonably come up. Because the only deck that I think you can play this in, well, in Modern you can play it like the Mono Black Necro deck, right? And then in Legacy, there's been like and like a Mono Black deck that's been popping up. Midnight Stout, I believe people are calling it. I guess you can play it in there, and I've seen people play like a fairer version of Mono Black Necro in Legacy. And I think you could reasonably play this card in either of those decks, and just like if you get thought seized early and somebody takes your like creature or planeswalker, like it could be nice to bring it back. Like I don't think that's I don't think you're putting it in your deck for for that mode, but I think it's something that could reasonably come up. But I do think, let's go back to like Midnight Stout. Let's say you have a Barrow-goyf out and your opponent has a Barrow-goyf out. Oh wait, that card has Death Touch, doesn't it? I was
It
gonna say
does.
making yours bigger is good. So maybe not that, but like growing your creature bigger than their Murktide, let's say, could be relevant.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not even gonna try to guess if this is good or not because I always misevaluate every charm. The ones that I think are gonna be good never see play, and the ones that I like just flip through on the spoiler page are the ones that end up being good. So I'll just take a wait and see on this one, but it's cool nonetheless, and I think the art's pretty sweet too. It's just and I mean it's anytime there's 3 black pips in a row in the casting cost. I mean, Necropotence, Necrodominance, Doomsday. A little smile comes across my face with that casting cost. So I hope it's good, because it seems like a cool card, but we'll see. Next up, Frenzied Baloth, green for a 3/2. It's a beast, and there's a lot of text on this for a 2-mana creature. 3/2 for 2 mana. This spell can't be countered. Trample, haste. Creature spells you control can't be countered. Combat damage can't be prevented. Kind of wild, especially if you're just waking up from a coma and haven't seen Magic card design in the last 5 to 7 years, and this is the first card that you see coming back. Like, your mind's probably blown, but is this even playable? Like, there's a lot on it for 2 mana, but like, is it even good?
I think you can play it, but I don't think you should, if that makes sense. Like, I think you can play this as a Green Sun Zenith target. It's obviously different than something like Allosaurus Shepherd, right? Oh, why did I think that this spell could be countered? No, this spell can't be countered either. So I guess that's really good. It's still a little bit different though, because it only affects creature spells rather
Yeah,
than green
Allosaurus
spells.
Shepherd's green spells, right? So it makes like your green suns and stuff uncounterable.
Yeah, but this is
Yeah.
actually an option for Nadu because you can make your nomads is now uncounterable, right?
Oh,
And it's
interesting.
also just like a way to get damage in. That being said, if I want to make myself uncounterable in Nadu, like I'd kind of rather just have Teferi in my deck. 3 is obviously more than 2, but Teferi does a lot more. Double green is kind of hard. The deck cares about its blue count. Um, But like this card is not terrible, and maybe in like the guy's Cradle version of Nadu, you play a copy.
Yeah, and from a modern perspective, I wonder, like, was this card designed while the ring was still legal? I think the way that their product pipeline works, it's very likely that this card was at least at some point in the design stage being designed while the One Ring was still legal in modern, and so the combat damage can't be prevented piece of it would obviously get you through ring protection. So I think people would potentially be a lot more excited about this if it was another reasonable way to punch through ring protection. But in modern, that's just not a thing we have to worry about anymore. And in Legacy, the ring is really like just confined to the Mystic Forge deck. So I don't think that
And Stompy.
you would do that. And sure, yep, that's right. And Stompy
And
as
having
well.
uncounterable creatures in there is relevant against Chalice of the Void.
Oh, I was just going to say, and the rest of the text doesn't really matter there, but I guess you are right. Depending on how you construct the deck, yeah, being able to just cast into Chalice could actually matter. So, hey, we'll see. We'll have to see how this shakes out. It does a lot. 2 toughness makes it pretty vulnerable, but man, is there a lot of text on here for 2 green mana. So hard to evaluate here. And then finally, Baloth Prime, 3 and a green. This is a creature beast. It's a 10/10, a 10/10 for 4 mana. It does have some more text, though. It says, this creature enters tapped with 6 stun counters on it. Womp womp. But there's more. Whenever you sacrifice a land, create a tapped 4/4 green beast creature token and untap this creature, which, if it has a stun counter on it, it would remain tapped, but you would remove a stun counter. And it also has a line of text that says 4 mana, sack a land, you gain 2 life. So 10/10, 4 mana, 6 stun counters. When you sack a land, you make a 4/4 beast that's tapped, and you try to untap this thing. And there's some trinket text on here. 4 mana, sack a land, gain 2 life. Worth calling out, this one is a commander card. Every other card that we have discussed is part of the standard legal set. This card specifically is a commander card, so it would be Legacy, I guess, or Vintage, but this won't see play in Vintage. But if this was going to see play anywhere in 60-card formats, it would be Legacy. Do you think this sees play anywhere in 60-card formats, Mapson?
Don't really, because I think if this was going to see play, then Titania, Priest of Argoth would be seeing play.
That's a good point. Titania, 1 mana more, but gets a land back from your graveyard right away for some instant value. Yeah, so that's a pretty good point. Well, I guess with that, we can move on from spoilers then, but exciting to see what we do with Tezzeret in the Mystic Forge deck. Quantum Riddler, I hope it's good in Nadu. Everything else, or in Beans, excuse me, not Nadu. Everything else we'll have to see how it goes.
There is actually one card I meant to put on the list that we did
What
miss.
is it? Yeah, bonus.
Icetill Explorer. So
Ice.
2 green for a creature insect scout, and you may play an additional land on each of your turns. You may play lands from your graveyard, and whenever a land you control enters, mill a card, and it's a 2/4. So just like the rest, I don't necessarily expect this to show up. I think it is very reasonable to try it in like a green-white depths or in a traditional lands because it combines exploration and Crucible or Ramunap, however you want to think of it, which are both effects that like those decks are happy to play. 4 mana is a bit on the high side. Like I don't really want to pay 5 mana to Green Sun Zenith for this. And lands, even though you put a lot of lands in play, you like don't actually make that much mana and you don't have that much mana spare. So it's definitely a lot, but like this plus a wasteland goes really hard just like by itself, you know?
Yeah. When this was spoiled, I was like, oh, we've had so many similar effects to this, but not really all stapled onto one card like that. So the fact that it's a nice compact package that you can Green Suns for, Cord for, or whatever is a new angle. And yeah, super, super powerful with Wasteland for sure if you can get that engine going.
Yeah, and doesn't die to Lightning Bolt either.
It doesn't. The mythical 4 toughness. All right, so that's it for spoilers. For the next 2 weeks, if you're listening and you want to play Magic with us, where are they able to find us, Maps? And I don't really have anything on my schedule for the next couple weeks except for the Legacy Showcase Challenge on Moto, but I know you do. So, where can folks play some Magic with you coming up here in the next couple weeks?
Yeah, I am bummed to be missing the Showcase Challenge. I do love those events. Thankfully, I already have my Atraxa avatar for the year. But you can find me at Buffalo Chicken Dip Legacy. I will be playing both days there. Spoiler alert, I'll probably play one with Nadu, probably play one with Mystic Forge. Though I still have 3 days, so I could do anything.
You have 3 days to make the wise decision to just double register with Mystic Forge.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to do that. I don't know. I really like being able to switch decks between days, which is funny because I didn't do that last time I was there. But yeah, I'm hoping that I have a similar performance to last time I played in one of those events. Last time I went for the same setup where he had his smaller event, larger event. I won one and then just missed top 8 on breakers of the other. So I'm hoping we can keep similar number of wins this time.
Nice. Fingers crossed for you. All right. So you can find Mapson at the Buffalo Chicken Dip event, and you can find me at 11 a.m. Eastern this Sunday playing the Legacy Showcase Challenge. So there you go. Hopefully between the two of us, we have some exciting wins to tell you about in the next episode. But if not, I can guarantee you I'll at least have some exciting follies. But Mapson, any last thoughts before we wrap up here today?
Nope.
All right, me neither. Well, hey, thanks for hanging in with us, everybody. Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you see any Edge of Eternities cards that you think we missed that you've been having some success with, we'd love to hear about it. So thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to give us a follow, a like, a subscribe, or send your friend a handwritten message with a link to our podcast on it that they'll have to type in by hand into their browser to get to us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.